Welcome to the Tzurba Hilchot Shabbat Program with Rabbi Shalom Rosner. Tzurba is a revolutionary halacha sefer which guides you through over 300 topics in Jewish law in a unique signature style. In this weekly series specifically, Rabbi Shalom Rosner learns through the Tzurba Hilchot Shabbat volumes, helping us all master the Halachot of Shabbat in just 2 years. Tzurba volumes are available for purchase worldwide on Amazon. And to learn more about Tzurba, or for those in Eretz Yisrael looking to purchase volumes, please head over to tzurbaolami.com. For more information, see the description below. And now, Rabbi Shalom Rosner.
Okay, let's get into shiur number 4. Shiur number 4 from our Tzurba Merabanan volume number 17, the Peretz family volume. And this is, of course, the Lax family edition of all the Tzurba Merabanan seforim. And we have 2 shiurim in front of us, all about Havdala and the end of Shabbos. We spoke about Kiddush, we spoke about Shalashudas, and the last topic to discuss regarding the assays of Shabbos, about things to do before we get to the things about not doing and the malachos, are 2 shiurim related to Havdala. So today we'll talk about when exactly does Shabbos end, all this, the sources and the sugya of Zmani Hayom. We'll talk about Havdala, Daraisa, Durabanan, are women obligated in Havdala, and what you're not allowed to do before Havdala in terms of eating and in terms of malacha. So that's today's topic, so let's get into it. So when does Shabbos end? We could have spoken about this also. When does Shabbos begin? Right, so the source of this is the sugya of Bein Hashmashos and the question of how to put together 2 different Gemaras. That's really the source. The Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Lamed Daled, we're on page 155. That's where these sources start. Source number 1. Source number 1, the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Daled. The Gemara in the second parak of Shabbos discusses when is Bein Hashmashos. Bein Hashmashos we usually call twilight. So when is it? Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, Bein Hashmashos safik min hayom umin halayla. It's a suffix whether it's part of the day, part of the night. Safik kula min hayom, maybe it's all part of the day. Safik kula min halayla, maybe it's all part of the night. Matilin oso l'chomer shnei yamim. So we treat it l'chumra. And therefore, we're not going to do malacha on a Friday night because maybe it's Shabbos, but towards the end, we also won't do malacha. So the twilight has a chumra. When exactly is Bein Hashmashos? So there are a couple of different opinions in the Gemara. Most opinions hold that it goes on for a certain length of time. The Rabbi Huda Shita is Hichsef ha'el yom al hifshel atachton. Right? Hichsef atachton al hichsef ha'el yom. The lower part of the sky starts getting dark. The upper part of the sky is still light. That's Bein Hashmashos. When it all gets dark, that's Laila. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Nechemya holds the time it takes to walk a half of a mil. And Rabbi Yossi is the opinion of Bein Hashmashos keheref ayin. Bein Hashmashos is just like the blink of an eye, like in a second. Rabbi Yossi and the other Rishon and the other Tanoim. So we generally hold like the other Tanoim. There is a beautiful Rav Kook in the beginning of Maseches Brachas where Rav Kook says maybe there's a machshava message behind Rabbi Yossi and the other Tanoim, and that is in life. In life, is there kodesh and chol, or is there kind of divrei rishus? Is there gray area? Is every single thing I do in life mitzvah or avera? If Hashem wants me to do it, then it's a mitzvah. If Hashem doesn't want me to do it, it's an avera. Right? And everything can fall into that category. Or do I say no? There's some gray area also. It's not a mitzvah, but it's also not an avera. Maybe it's stuff that you have to do. All right, just shopping during the week, not for Shabbos. You have to live. So you can look at it as mitzvah to keep myself healthy. And so it could all be a mitzvah, but is there divrei rishus? So it's pretty clear that there are divrei rishus, right? This concept of melchemes rishus is a concept of other dvarim shal rishus, as is described in Chazal. But Rav Kook says maybe that's the machlokas here. He thinks there's a machlokas between the Ravid and the Chovos Halavavos. But he thinks maybe that Rabbi Yossi says there's kodesh and chol, there's light and there's day and night. There's nothing in between. Well, we paskin that there is divrei rishus. We paskin that there is other elements to this as well. So says the Gemara. Says the Gemara after all of these opinions. De Itmar towards the end of source number 1 now. Shir ben Hashmashos Bakama Amar Rabba Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel Shlosha Chelke Mil. Right, 3 parts of a mil. My Shlosha Chelke Mil. Ela Tlasa Rive Mila. 3/4 of a mil. The Gemara in Shabbos tells us clearly that Bein Hashmashos is the time it takes to walk 3/4 of a mil. And the Gemara says, Halach Rabbi Yehuda. Again, there are a couple of opinions here in the Gemara. Again, Rabbi Yehuda, when the lower part of the sky is dark and the upper part is still light, the Rabbi Nechemia, the time it takes to walk half a mil. Rabbi Yossi, Keheref Ayin. But we generally assume like Rabbi Yehuda. But how long is that? The time it takes to walk 3/4 of a mil. The Gemara on the next daf in Shabbos, daf Lamed Hey, source number 2, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda, the Amora, was a Talmud of Rav, and then after Rav died, he became a Talmud of Shmuel. So sometimes you have Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, sometimes you have Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Kochav Echad Yom, Shnayim Ben Hashmashos. Now it's telling us, what about stars? Another way to calculate it. There's one star out, you see one star, it's still daytime. 2 stars, Shnayim Ben Hashmashos. 2 stars out, that is Ben Hashmashos. 3 stars out, that's Laila. That's nighttime. That's after Ben Hashmashos. Tani Nami Hachi. There's also a brisa like that. Kochav Echad Yom Shnayim Ben Hashmashos Shlosha Laila. What type of stars? Rabbi Yossi says medium stars. Medium stars, whatever that means. Lo Kochavim Gdolam Anirim Bayom. Not the huge stars that you could even maybe see during the day. Not the small stars that you can't even see at night. But Beinonim, the median type of stars. Fine. That's one Gemara. That Ben Hashmashos is 3/4 of a mil. What's the problem? That the Gemara in Pesachim, Tzadi Dalid, and there's a question that all the Rishonim ask. Tzadi Dalid Aman Aleph, source number 3, the Gemara says that the time it takes from Shkia to Tzeis, from the sunset until Tzeis HaKochavim, which is when the stars come out, is the time it takes to walk 4 mil. So I thought that Ben Hashmashos, twilight, is the time between Shkia and Tzeis HaKochavim. So how could it be that the Gemara in Shabbos tells us that Ben Hashmashos is the time it takes to walk 3/4 of a mil, and the Gemara in Pesachim says that the time from Shkia until Tzeis is the time it takes to walk 4 mil? That's the stira. And there are various answers to answer this. The Maram al-Shakar in a tshuva, not in front of you, Maram al-Shakar quotes some Gaonim as a machlokes hasugis. Okay, easy, then you got to pick one. But Rov Rishonim don't assume that way. There are 2 famous suggestions, and then there's one that we'll mention at the end, which is a little less famous, but I think we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago in these shiurim as well. Rabbeinu Tam, and many other Rishonim hold like Rabbeinu Tam. The Ramban and the and other Rishonim hold like Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says you have to be mechalik between the 2 words of the Gemara. The Gemara says in Pesachim Tzadi Daled, Mishkia Sachama Tzeis HaKochavim, from Shkia till Tzeis is 4 mil. That's true. That's from what we call sunset until Tzeis is 4 mil. But the Gemara in Shabbos says, Misha Tishka. Misha Tishka does not mean Shkia. Shkia means what we call sunset. Misha Tishka means once it has set, which is a much later time. Once it has disappeared, a later time. So if you would have a timeline, if you picture a timeline, you have 4 mil from Shkia until Tzeis. The last 3/4 of that, the last 3/4 of a mil of that 4 mil, that's Ben Hashmashos according to Rabbeinu Tam. So up until there, the first 3¼ mil from Shkia to Tzeis is Vada Yom according to Rabbeinu Tam. The last 3/4 of a mil is the time of Ben Hashmashos, Savik Yom, Savik Laila. So according to Rabbeinu Tam, everything is pushed much later. The word, let's see Rabbeinu Tam. Source number 4 in the Sefer HaYashar. Says Rabbeinu Tam in the Sefer HaYashar. V'lo tema misha sherotza achama likanis barakia, demeyazu maschalei adem. It's not talking about regular shkia. Ella misha tishka hachama shekfar nichnasa barakia. It already entered into the firmament, so to speak. The avra ba'ov yosharakia v'odayin kinegad hachalon, whatever these words mean. But it's a later time. It's a later time that we have, and therefore he says, turning the page in the continuation of source number 4, Ela al karchach mishkias achama yom gamarhu. What we call sunset according to Rabbeinu Tam is Vada Yom. Is Vada Yom, and this is again what many Rishonim say. Rabbeinu Tam is quoted by Tosfos and the Ramban, and others. And this is what the Shulchan Aruch paskins. Shulchan Aruch paskins this way, and that's how you answer the stira. Right, 3/4 of a mil is the last part of the 4 mil time. That's Ben Hashmashos. Yesh Omrim, says the Shulchan Aruch, Reis Samach Aleph. This is in starting Shabbos. This is in Halakas Neiros. But it says the Shulchan Aruch there. Yesh Omrim, source number 5. Shetzorach Losa Bichalal HaKodesh. You have to add on, as we spoke about at length, Tosefes Shabbos. Vizman Tosefes Zu Mitchilas Hashkia. From the beginning of Shkia, She'ein HaShemesh Nireis Ala Aretz, Ad Zmein Ben Hashmashos. Vazman Hazeh Hu Gimel Milin V'Reviyah. Right, this time, the Ben Hashmashos is 3/4 of a mil. Before that, in the 3 1/4, so during that time, that's Vada Yom according to Rabbeinu Tam. We're going to see that we generally don't assume that way. But Tosefes is when it's not Safek Yom Safek Laila yet. So Ben Hashmashos you can't make into Tosefes because that's already Safek Yom Safek. It's already almost Shabbos. It's already possibly Shabbos. So you have to start it earlier. And then he says the shiur's Ben Hashmashos is 3/4 of a mil. And he can be makdim, as we mentioned, from Plag HaMincha. So this is Rabbeinu Tam and many Rishonim in the Shulchan Aruch. But the Vilna Gaon, the Gra says in a very long piece in Reis Samach Aleph, but 2 words capture his own machlokes. Hachush machish. The Gra says logic and reality contradicts Rabbeinu Tam. Look outside. It's pitch black outside, and Rabbeinu Tam is saying that's Vada Yom. That can't be. It can't be. Just look outside. Achush machish. Rabbeinu Tam says for a long time, after what we call Shkia is going to be Vada Yom. That's impossible, says the Gra. And other rayas as well. But the Gra says no. Again, the timeline. You have the 4 mil from Shkia to Tzeis. The last 3/4 of a mil in that time period, according to the Rabbeinu Tam, that's the Safek Yom Safek Laila, and the rest of it, the first part is 3 1/4 mil of Vada Yom. The Gra flips it. He says no. The first 3/4 of a mil of that 4 mil, that's Ben Hashmashos. How do you put together? 3/4 of a mil is from Shkia to Tzeis. What is the 4 mil? That the end of 4 mil is something called Tzeis Kol HaKochavim. That's for other halachas. But really, it's the first part. Much, much earlier. The day ends and night comes much earlier, according to the Gra. Right? It's already Vadai Laila, 3/4 of a mil after what we call sunset. That's the Gra. In source number 6, says Kalak Al-Chavim, that's the later time, but that's nafkamina for other halachas. But that's the Gra that the Bir Halacha points out that this is not just the Gra. There are shitas of the Gaonim and the Maral Shakar and others. Rav Shira Gaon, Rav Hai Gaon, Nisim Gaon, all quote like that as well. But again, this is a major machlokes. As known as the machlokes between the Gra and Rabbeinu Tam about how to calculate Zmani Hayom. So this is why. The times that we're familiar with, you have here of 72 minutes, you hear of 96 minutes. Where does this come from? According to Rabbeinu Tam, let's say how long are the minutes? So there are 3 shitas in the Achronim. How long is a mil? How long does it take to walk a mil? 18 minutes, 22 and a half minutes, or 24 minutes? Those are the 3 shitas, and maybe within there's some others. But 18, 22 and a half, and 24. So what's 4 mil? If you say 18 minutes, 18 times 4, right, it's 72. So that's where you get 72 minutes. I hold 72 minutes. Rabbeinu Tam. Right, that's Rabbeinu Tam. If you hold a mil is 4, the time it takes to walk a mil is 18 minutes, then 4 mil is 72 minutes. If you hold, like, the 24 minutes, you might hear some people hold 96. 96 minutes, that's Rabbeinu Tam assuming the largest mil. What about, you might have heard Shalosh Shudis and Hefsek Tara and others, 3/4 of a mil, maybe you could still be Mako a little bit b'diavad. So the Rav Moshe mentions that, Rav Avadia has 12. Where does that come from? It comes from the Gra. Because 3/4 of a mil, if you say 24 minutes is 4 mil, right? So 12 minutes is 2 mil, and you keep going down, so 12 minutes is maybe a half, and 9 minutes is 3/4 of a mil. So you got to work out the details, but this is where it comes from. So who do we paskin like? So that's a major machlokas. The Bir Halacha says in source number 8. V'nachon l'chadchila l'tzeis das Rabbeinu Tam l'chadchila to be yotzi Rabbeinu Tam. He says v'kol ani ravasa machzikim b'shitaso. Not on Friday night. Rabbeinu Tam was make even on Friday night before Shabbos, but the poskim say even if you're going to be makar like Rabbeinu Tam, that doesn't mean to start Shabbos later and to do malacha into the Graz Shabbos. No, shalol asu malacha Motza'ei Shabbos, but the Bir Halacha says on Motza'ei Shabbos not do malacha until the end of the 4 mil. But many other poskim, the majority of poskim say that this is a chumrah and one doesn't have to hold of it, especially in Eretz Yisrael, where the twilight is much faster. Rav Yisrael Blazer, Rav Chaim Noah, and he quotes in the footnotes here, the Tzitz Eliezer, Rav Shlomo Zalman, Rav Nevin Zal, Rav Elyashiv, all say that the Gra could be followed even lechatchila. Even lechatchila, one can rely on the Gra. The Pri Yitzchak, that's the Rav Yisrael Petterberger, the Talmud of Rav Yisrael Salanter. He was in St. Petersburg. He came to Eretz Yisrael towards the end of his life. He was nifter in 1907. So the Pri Yitzchak says, "B'Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, she'aminhag hapashut al pi hagedolim l'nhog k'shita zu af lohakel b'Motzei Shabbos." Or Mekel, "V'lo yimsa gamei hamachmir rak echad me'elef, 1 in 1,000. V'hamachmir b'Motzei Shabbos kedas Rabbeinu Tam." We generally don't assume that way. Rav Ovadia said, well, he's a Shulchan Aruch man. So Rav Ovadia says, no, those that are chared l'dvar Hashem should be machmer like Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, that is the machlokas. How do you exactly measure the coming out of the stars? So that's very tricky. It might depend on, as is said here, on latitude, elevation, the time of year, right? How do you? The Ran says, just to be safe, one should only recognize when 3 stars are close together, so they're viewed as one, as the Ran says in source number 11. Ritzufin b'makom echad hayu. Echad hayu mefuzarin asar batzis v'lacha b'ship tosefes. If they're still mefuzar scattered, not enough. Again, most of us can't see with the naked eye, so that's why it's we don't go by what it looks like looking for stars, but we go by the luachs that we have. And again, here it talks about the different gradations, meaning when wherever the different angles where the sun is, because you have to know if you're in a flat or if you're in a mountain or if you're in a valley. But just one other hara, and that is Ramosha. Ramosha is known as saying 50 minutes. 50 is, where does 50 minutes come from? So that was Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe looked outside in New York without artificial light, and he says 50 minutes is for sure Vadai Laila, according to everybody. Maybe he was using the Svar of Achush Machish that the Gra used for even Rabbeinu Tam. And it can't be, says Rav Moshe, that Rabbeinu Tam would say that 50 minutes is not nighttime. So Rav Moshe worked backwards. Rav Moshe says 50 minutes is 4 mil. That's what Rav Moshe did. So 50 minutes is Rabbeinu Tam, according to Rav Moshe. It's not that, I don't hold like Rabbeinu Tam. They only hold 50 minutes. I hold 7. No, according to Rav Moshe, 50 minutes is Rabbeinu Tam for New York. So if it's 50 minutes, so that's why 3/4 of a mil is 9 minutes. That's why Rav Moshe is mekel by certain halachas regarding 9, because according to the Rabbeinu Tam, it's Vadayom. Even according to the Gra, it's still Safek Yom Safek Laila. It's still Ben Hashmashas by the 9 minutes. But that's what where the 50 minutes comes from, or some have 42 minutes, depending on one's how one works. One final source, I think I mentioned this a couple of shiurim ago, and that is the sheet of the Yereim. The Yereim is Rabbi Lezer Metz, one of the Talmidim of Rabbeinu Tam. He has another answer to answer the stira. Not like Rabbeinu Tam, not like the Gra, not like say it's a Machlokas Asugyas. The Yereim says that Bein Hashmashos is before Shkia. You have the 4 mil, and then before the 4 mil, before Shkia it says is another 3/4 of a mil, and that's Safek Yom Safek Laila. That's Bein Hashmashos. So we don't pass it like the Yereim. But there is a minhag of Klal Yisrael that's based on this Yereim. Because according to the Yereim, if you assume that the mil is the largest mil, right? According to the largest sheet, 24 minutes. 24 minutes is the amount of time that it would take to walk a mil. So 3/4 of that is 18 minutes. So according to that, according to the Yereim, 18 minutes is the beginning of Ben Hashmashas, before Shkia. That is why the minhag developed to light candles in all of Klal Yisrael at least 18 minutes before Shkia. To be makbid, at least lechatchila, again, we still do malacha, but women try to do 18 minutes. The Mishnah Berurah quotes this Yereim and says, do 20 minutes, because you have 2 minutes of Tosefes. So it's 18 minutes for the Yereim and 2 minutes of Tosefes. That's why you might have some shuls. Our shul, we try to do 20 minutes before Shkia to have the time of Hadlakas Neiros Shabbos. This is Zmani Hayom, which has to do with every day, but especially Shabbos and Yantif. There's another machlokas, which we're not going to talk about now, and that is in terms of calculating the day. When is the day? Like shows manios, we know, like the third hour, the fourth hour. Does that go from dawn until tzeis, or is that from sunrise to sunset? So that's a machlokas known as the Magen Avram and the Gra as well. The Magen Avram has the longer day, and the Vilna Gaon has the shorter day, and we pass on like the Gra. That's why the Magen Avram's Zman Kriyishma is always earlier, and the Gra's is later. But the Chazon Ish has a lashon like it's as if a basko went down from Shemayim, to say that we pass on like the Gra in that regard. Okay, that's a related topic. So Havdala. Let's get into Havdala. So is Havdala a mitzvah d'oraisa or a mitzvah d'Rabbanan? So many people, we take Kiddush very seriously. Havdala needs a little chizuk. Sometimes everybody's doing something else by Havdala. They're already on their phones. They're already half. We should try to recognize Havdala is a mitzvah, and it's for sure a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It might even be a mitzvah d'oraisa. Who says that? The Rambam. The Rambam says it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. Mitzvah d'oraisa, says the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs in source 17. On page 166. V'yamru gamkin katsheyu b'knisaso v'katsheyu b'yisiaso. To sanctify Shabbos when it's going in and when it's going out. Klomar ha'havdala shehi gamkin chelek mizachiras Shabbos misukenes umitzuve. Right? That's the mitzvah of Shabbos. It's to cordon off Shabbos. That's the way that Rav Soloveitchik understood it. If you say Shabbos is in the Zechira Shabbos and Kiddush is about Kiddush and Havdalah together, it's about cordoning off Shabbos as a special day, but when it starts and when it ends. Then and includes Kiddush and Havdalah. The Rambam also says that in Hilchot Shabbos and Perach Avtes, mitzvahs aseh min haTorah lekadesh es Yom HaShabbos midvarim. It's a mitzvah to sanctify Shabbos with words. Shene'emar zacharos Yom HaShabbos lekacho. Klomer zachreu zechiras shevach v'kiddush v'tzarach lezachreu b'knisaso u'b'yitziaso. When it goes in and when it goes out. B'knisaso b'kiddush hayom u'b'yitziaso b'havdala. That is Shabbos. And that is the mitzvah of Kiddush. Other Rishonim, the Maggid Mishnah, the Ramban, the Orchos Chaim here quotes the Rash. No, it's D'Rabbanan. It's a smach D'Rabbanan, right? There is a Gemara in Shavuos that seems to say that it's gives the impression that it's D'Oraisa lahavdil ben hakodesh ben hachol, but we assume that any of those limudim are smachtas, says the Orchos Chaim in the name of the Rash and others, and therefore Kiddush is D'Oraisa, but Havdalah is not. If you say that, then the mitzvah is not just about cordoning off Shabbos, because you don't cordon it off. You just separate it at the beginning. So that's what Rav Soloveitchik said. According to that shita, Kiddush must have a different essence. It's about just sanctifying the day, adding my own element. We discussed this in the Kiddush shiur, like the Gemara says in Nedarim, that even if you have a Bechor Behemoth Tahora, there's still, even though it's automatic Kedusha, mitzvah lahakdisho, it's a mitzvah to sanctify it and say, Harei zeh kadosh, even though it's kadosh b'rechem. So too Shabbos, even though Shabbos is kadosh b'meila, there's a mitzvah for the Jew to sanctify it. And that's why Kiddush would be D'Oraisa, but not Havdalah. So that's a machlokes rishonim. Are women obligated in Havdalah? So this is also a major machlokes. So it might be dependent on this machlokes. You might say, women are chayav in Kiddush. We know that. Women are chayav in Kiddush. The Gemara in Brachas Daf Chaf. Nashim chayavos b'Kiddush hayom. And we said that that could include maybe all the mitzvahs of Shabbos. Shalashudis and the Lechem Mishnah, all the mitzvahs of Shabbos. So you might say, especially if Havdalah is D'Oraisa, then l'chara women should be obligated in Havdalah. The Rambam doesn't say any p'tur of women. So if you hold like Havdalah is D'Oraisa, then you could say that women are obligated because they're included. If it's D'Rabbanan, so it's really not part of the mitzvahs of Shabbos per se. The Rabbanan added it on, so maybe that falls into the regular Zman Grama rules, and women would be Pturos. So that is a Machlokes Rishonim. If you look in the Orchos Chaim that we just quoted in 19, the Rash held, Nashim Ein Mavdilas Latzman. Dein Havdalah Tuli B'Shmir Shabbos. Havdalah is after Shabbos. It's not one of the mitzvahs of Shabbos, and therefore women are not obligated. There's no source to obligate them. If you look in the Maggid Mishnah says, I'm not sure. Even if it's D'Rabbanan, maybe women are obligated because the Rabbanan connected this to Kiddush. Havdala Nami, says the Maggid Mishnah. Imi dvar Torah, nafkala michiva denasha mehasam. If it's darais, like we just said, v'imi midivrayim, dumya de kiddush tiknua. It could be that they were misakin Havdala dumya de kiddush, even if it's not formally part of kiddush. V'rabbeinu sasam kan, v'kivish l'hizkir ben p'tur mechlal shein chayavos. The Rambam doesn't say a word, so the Maggid Mishnah thinks that the Rambam holds it's chayav. So what do we paskin? The Shulchan Aruch quotes two opinions. Nashim, source 22. Reish Sadivav Sivches. Nashim Chayavos B'Havdala. Kishem Shechayavos B'Kiddush. Kiddush and Havdala. V'yesh Mi Shecholek. And there are those that argue. So, Mach 2 days in the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah, Hal Kain, since it's a machlokes, Lo Yavdilu La'atzman. Since a machlokes, it's better for them not to say Havdala themselves. Rak Yishma'u Havdala Min HaNashim. They should hear it from men. That's L'chadchila, because maybe they're not obligated. The problem is, even if they're not obligated, the Ramah, what does the Ramah always say? The Ramah says, Mitzvah Seishes Van Grama, women could do, and they can even make a bracha on it. Women can shake a lulav with a bracha, women can sit in a sukkah with a bracha, and women can hear shofar with a bracha. So what would be the difference? That's what the Bach says. I don't know what the Ramah is talking about. The Bach says, even if they're patur, they can make Havdala. They can make Havdala themselves, just like other mitzvahs that they are paturas from. So the Achronim, the Maggid Avram, and other Achronim on the page try to figure out the Ramah. The Ramah paskins that women are allowed to make brachos on mitzvahs that they're patur from. So why is this different? So the Maggid Avram has an interesting svara, where he says, and you got to think about this svara, maybe the Ramah only allows women to make brachos on mitzvahs that they're patur from if there is a maisa mitzvah. If they're doing an objective maisa mitzvah, then the bracha, even though they're not obligated, but they're doing a maisa mitzvah that's recognized daraisa, so you can make a bracha on that by shofar and lulav and sukkah. But here there's no maisa. Here it's just words. So if it's just words, maybe that's why it's different. Maybe that's why it's different. That's why the Ramah is not as comfortable. V'yefshar, says the Magen Avraham, the das haRamah, but mitzvah sheish ba asiya rashan lasos levarech. If it's a mitzvah that has a ma'isa, fine. Avo bedavar she'ein ba ela habracha kigon kan ein rashos. Maybe v'yefshar demihai time alonago lekadish halavana. And then he adds, maybe it's similar by kiddush levana. Women don't do kiddush levana. Why not? So again, there's another in Hilchos Kiddush Levana. I think the Magen Avraham quotes from the Shla. It goes back to Chava. Heim garmu pagam halavana. But here he's saying maybe the Kiddush Levana is the same thing as Havdala. It's both words. So the Ramah would allow a bracha on something that you're patur from, a mitzvah you're patur from, if there's a ma'isa mitzvah. But if there's no ma'isa mitzvah, maybe not. But the Magen Avraham ends off, Iker K'divrei HaBach. But the Iker is like the Bach, meaning I'm trying to defend the Ramah, but I think the Bach is right, that really, Me'ikar Adin, women can make this bracha, just like they could do all other mitzvahs, I say, Shazman Gram. Good. The Mishnah Berurah quotes that there are women, and many, this is a famous minhag, of not drinking the Havdala wine. Why not? Why don't you drink the Havdala wine? So there are some nigla suggestions. Right? The Har Tzvi, it's quoted here in a footnote. The Har Tzvi says, well, we're not sure if they're obligated in the Eish, which we'll talk about soon. So maybe it's a hefsek between the bracha bar paragafen, which you say first, and the drinking. But there's also a Pi Kabbalah. There's all these legends that's going to happen if the women drink the Havdala wine. So if she's not going to drink the wine, then obviously how's she going to make Havdala if she's not going to drink the wine? Mishnah Berurah points that out. But either way, Me'ikar Adin, we're machmir. If a woman does not have any man to make Havdala for her, she makes her own Havdala. The Aruch HaShulchan says a beferish, right? There's a suffix daraisa l'chumra possibly. According to the Rambam, it's a mitzvah daraisa, and even according to the others, it's a suffix mitzvah. So women would for sure make Havdala if there is no man to be motzi them. It says the Aruch HaShulchan, v'isi mishehiksha heich yavdilu. How can they make Havdala? Because Havdala. Women don't drink. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, you're trying to bring the minhag to be doche the mitzvah. V'tamahani al zeh. Da'atu dinahu? Is that a din that women don't drink the Havdala wine? Minhag ba'almu. It's a minhag. No, first of all, not everybody is choshesh for this or concerned. Upshita d'kshem avdilos richas lishtos. They have to make Havdala if there's nobody else, and if they make Havdala, then they need to drink the wine. What about the bracha of Eish? The bracha of Eish. The Bir Halacha says, I'm not sure if that one they're going to be chayivin. I'm not sure if they're chayiv in Eish. Why is it that Eish women might be pturas from? Let's think about it. It's a Zman Grama, and it's not an Iker part of the Havdala. And that's why the Bir Halacha is not so sure whether women should say it. And actually he says women shouldn't. Says the Bir Halacha in source 26. Umistafakna, I'm not sure. Afilu Laman Da'amar Nashim Chayavos B'Havdala, even according to the Man Da'amar, that women are obligated in Havdala Im Chayavos, but Birchas Haner, I'm not sure about the bracha on Borei Morei Ha'esh, which B'ez Hashem we'll talk about in the next year about what type of bracha that is. But the Bishlam Havdala Afshu Zman Grama, even though Havdala is a Zman Grama, it's included in the mitzvah of Zachar, Daraisa, Darabanan, whatever we say. And even if you say why it's Darabanan, like the Maggid Mishnah says, Ke'ein Darabanan Tiknuha, Mashenkin Bener, Ner is Niskan Al Brias Ha'or, because fire was created in Motza'ei Shabbos. Shena Shayachal Shabbos Klal. So that's a Zman Grama. So maybe women aren't chayiv, and therefore he says, and he says, the Ein Lomar, and don't say that the Kivin Didikvas B'Berchas Havdala Chada Dina Islahu. Well, once it's part of Havdala, then maybe it's considered part of Havdala. No. No, we know, let's say Tisha B'Av night, when Shabbos, Sunday is Tisha B'Av. What do? You just say Bar Mir Aish without Havdala. Havdala is the next night. And what about Havdala on Yantif? You have Havdala without the Aish on Motza'ei Yantif. So, says the Bir Halacha, since L'chadchila, I don't think it's really part of one unit. The Yoser Nachal Lomar Te'ena Chayeves. Amazing. Better not to say it, and that's what the Shmir Shabbos paskas. The Shmir Shabbos paskas like this Bir Halacha in source 27. Isha She'en La Misha Yotziena Yidei Chovas Havdala. If a woman doesn't have anybody to make Havdala for her, so she's saying it herself. Tavdala Atzma V'Tishta Ben Ayayin, as we saw from the Aruch HaShulchan, she has to drink the water. But Kadesh Lo Lavatal Mitzvahs Havdala Avalo Tevarech Al Haner. Don't do Ner. Amazing. Don't do Ner. That's because it doesn't do with Shabbos. That's to do with the Bri of the Or. Bisamim, he doesn't say a word about, because Bisamim is about the Neshama. Yisera, as we'll learn, is connected to Shabbos. But the air, Ner not. Rav Moshe does not agree, and I think the Minhag Olam will be like Rav Moshe. It will be very strange for a woman who's making Havdalah to skip part of it. Rav Moshe says in Choshe Mishpat, Beis Mem Zayin, in source 28, Lanias Daiti, Yesh La Lavarech Al Birchas Haner. No, they should. First of all, if you say women are obligated in Havdala, he doesn't say women are obligated in Havdala. Does the Shulchan Aruch say, but she shouldn't say Ner? So, Mistimas HaPoskim, right, up until the Bir Halacha, nobody thought of this for 2,000 years since the Gemara. The women, the Ramah, the past 500 years, again, this is one of those rayas that someone should say something. There are many rayas, like discussions like this. Parshas Zachar in a leap year, when there's 13 months in between the two Parshas Zachars. You have to make sure to have Kavana in Kiseitse in between. Nobody said that before 200 years ago. So if nobody said that the poskim didn't bring it down, it must not be true. Why? Okay, you got to figure out why. So here too, you got to figure out why. But none of the poskim more before 100 years ago said that women shouldn't make Borei Morei Ha'esh. And therefore Moshe says they should say it. They should say it. And then he says, and here's a piece of lumdus, is it Zman Grama? Is it Zman Grama? Ikar adavar l'hachshe birchas re'el Zman Grama ino barer. D'ha etzem chiyav ha'brachas l'varech al ha'mitzvahs l'varech al kol davar shiur liYisrael v'al kol davar me'habria. Right, you're making a bracha on the bria, a fire that was created that night. So is it a bracha on the Zman, a Zman Grama? Like tefillin and tzitzis goes by the time. It's daytime now, so I have to wear tzitzis. It's daytime now, weekday, I have to wear tefillin. It's Motza'ei Shabbos, so I have to make Borei Ha'esh? No, it's fire. Sometimes, if you have something that happens to be on a certain day, but it's not directly connected to the date, that might not be called a Zman Grama. So again, that is a big discussion by many other mitzvahs. Or maybe I'll just mention one or two. There's a Ramban. It's a famous Ramban if you know it, but we'll make it famous. The Ramban says, some say it's a mistake in the Ramban. The Ramban in Maseches Kedushin, around Daf Lamed Daled, has a list of the mitzvahs Aseh Zman Grama and mitzvahs Aseh Lo Zman Grama. So one of the mitzvahs that are not Zman Grama is Sviras HaOmer. Sviras HaOmer, says the Ramban, is not Zman Grama, and therefore women are obligated. So ask all the Rachronim, it's not Zman Grama, that's the most Zman Grama. Your counting time. It starts on the second night of Pesach. Of course that's Zman Grama. So some say it's a mistake, it shouldn't have said Sviras HaOmer, it should have said Sviras HaZava. So some other, it might have said Samachei. But it says it in the Ramban, right? So if it says it in the Ramban, so how do you deal with that problem? So suggest some of the Achronim. Zman Grama means if you have a certain mitzias that's always, and sometimes it's a mitzvah, sometimes it's not a mitzvah. I could eat matzah today, but it's not Pesach today. So today it's not a mitzvah. If I eat matzah on Pesach, that's a mitzvah. So that shows it's the time that causes the mitzvah. But what if you only have a reality that exists at a certain time? So is that a Zman Grama? No, the Zman causes the reality, and the reality causes the mitzvah, but it's not that the time causes the mitzvah, right? And the reality is always there. Kiddush Levana, we mentioned before. Some say Kiddush Levana, is that a Zman Grama? Right? So some say it's a Zman Grama, but others say the Maggid Avram quotes it has to do with Chava, so maybe that's not a Zman Grama. The Shlomo Kluger on the bottom of the Shulchan Aruch and the Chacham Shlomo Kluger, the Rav of Broid for many years, suggests maybe it's not a Zman Grama, because the mitzvah is to praise Hashem when the moon's getting bigger. That happens to be only in the first half of the month, but it doesn't mean that one has to. The mitzvah doesn't exist. I'm sorry, the mitzvah doesn't exist the second half of the month, right? It's not that the reality of the moon getting bigger always exists. Today it's a mitzvah, tomorrow it's not a mitzvah. The mitzvah is only when there is a moon getting bigger, which happens to be only in 2 weeks out of the year, out of the month. So that's not a Zman Grama. Bikurim is another one. Rav Yerucham Fishel Perlau, the great Achron, who took Rav Sadia Gaon Sefer HaMitzvahs, which is a song, and you can fit on 2 pages, and he made it into 2,000 pages in his big 3-fat volume on Sefer HaMitzvahs. So there in the Hagdama, on page 61, he talks about this related to Bikurim. Is Bikurim a Zman Grama? You can only bring Bikurim between Shavuos and Hanukkah latest. So he discusses there too. It might not be the Zman is Gorim, it's just that that's when you have the Bikurim. Okay, but here too, it could be that Ramosha is saying that fire was created tonight. But it's not at the time. It's not direct. Okay, either way, Lamaisa, Machlokas Achronim, whether women should do Eish. The Shmir Shabbos gives some other guidelines in terms of a woman making Havdala. So again, if a woman, Lachatchila, because it's a Machlokas, women should hear Havdala from a man. If a man knows that he's going home to make Havdala for his wife, and they make Havdala in Shul, he should have Kavana not to be Yotzei. Not to be Yotzei, because if he's already Yotzei, and then a woman's waiting, so gets it more difficult to be motzi. Because if, again, the woman had a for sure obligation, then that's yotza motzi, that's arvus. But here, maybe it's, she's not yotzi, she's not chayiv, so that's why it's trickier. Ish, says the Shmir Shabbos in 29. Ish, asher kvar hivdala atzmo, o shama havdala, me'acher, o bebeis hakneses, yotzi dechavaso, machlokas haposkim, im muter lo lahavdal b'shvil isha, v'lachein, im ein sham ish shalo hivdala dain, muter shetavdil hilatzma. He says if the man was Yotzei, she should say it herself. Sometimes women are not comfortable saying it themselves. They don't want to drink the wine. So, the man can say it. But it's better if he has in mind not to be Yotzei. So he's Yotzei his wife when he gets home. The Or Latzion, the Rabbi Tzion Abba Shol says that if a man said it, it's okay. Nagush avim abal kfar hivdil sheyachol aval havdil ishto lo tiyasa b'chol seder. Right? Maybe better for the woman to make the bracha on the candle. Okay, different opinions about that. That's in terms of a woman making Havdala. Let's get into the next topic of activities prohibited before Havdala. Milacha before Havdala and eating before Havdala. So let's talk about eating first. So that we know there's an Isser, just like we spoke about, there's an Isser of eating before Kiddush. There is an Isser of eating before Havdala. The Gemara Pesachim Daf Kuf Hey, source number 31. We are now on page 172. The Gemara Pesachim tells us, Rav Chananya bar Shalmiya v'Talmidei de Rav, Haviyasi b'Sudasa. They were all sitting for a Suda. V'koyalei Rav Hamnuna Saba. Rav Hamnuna Saba was there with them. Amrulei Zil Chazi, go check. Imakadosh Yom Nifsek. It was Friday afternoon. They were eating a meal, and they said, go check if it's Shabbos. Go check if Shabbos started. If it got dark. V'nikvi l'Shabbos said, then we'll be kovea this meal for Shabbos. Well, maybe we'll make Kiddush. Amar lehu lo tzrichisu Shabbos kava nafsha. Rav Hamnuna Saba says, no, Shabbos is kovei itself. The second that Shabbos starts, it becomes a Shabbos meal. There's a mitzvah of Shabbos, there's a mitzvah of Kiddush. But Savar Minei, they thought, ki hichi de kaval Kiddush ka kaval Havdala. Just like by Shabbos, it becomes a Shabbos meal, so too by Havdala, it becomes a weekday meal. Amulu Rav Amram, hachi amarav lekiddush kavas, v'lo Havdala. No, only for Kiddush, and it does not establish a chiyuv to make Havdala. There's no chiyuv, meaning you could be mamshech, you could continue eating. And you don't have to stop your Suda. You can't start a Suda so late on Motza'ei Shabbos. And one doesn't have to stop for eating, but maybe for drinking, which is less significant, so then one must stop his drinking, and maybe that only applies to water. So what do we get out of this Gemara? What do we get out of this Gemara? It seems like there is an Isser, but maybe if you're in the still of the middle of a meal, you don't have to stop. As we know, Tosefes, Shalashuris can continue late. But if one is not in the middle of a meal, then it seems like drinking is a problem, and maybe only water. Maybe only water. Says and then the Gemara quotes, this argues on Rav Huna. Rav Huna chazil hu gaver deshasi mai kodem Havdala. He saw somebody drinking before Havdala. Amarle lo mustafi mar askara. Right? Aren't you worried? Are you worried about askara, about the certain type of throat ailment? And Rabbi Kiva says, kalatoim klum kodem shiavdil. You can't eat anything before Havdala. Can't eat for Havdala misaso ba'askara. Right? And the Gemara notes that the Rabbanan were only makpid on water. But not others. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch says, Aser Reisadi Tes. Aser Lechol Shum Davar Afilu Shos Yayin Oshar Mashkim Chutz Bimayim. You can't drink anything chashuv before water, except for water. Except for water. Mishatech Shachashi Avdil. Right, and before Havdala, water, which means it's more makel than Kiddush. By Kiddush, you can't even have water. But Havdala, one is allowed to have water. But if you're in the middle of Shalashudas, one doesn't have to be mafsik. What if you're in the middle of drinking, you're not having a meal? If you're having a meal, then you can be mamshech. If you're not having a meal, but you're still drinking, then it seems like you should be mafsik. Even though the Ramah says, pashud kisvara harishona. The minhag is to allow water, even if it's when it's nighttime. Meaning, even if you're not in the middle of a meal, for sure you could be mamshech. But let's say one is not in the middle of a meal. The Ramah says me'ikar kasvar rishona that you can continue. Let's say a rabbi's giving a shiur between mincha and ma'ariv as it's getting late. You can still drink water. The Ramah says me'ikar hadin. The Taz says maybe even more lakula based on a rush that you could start shalashudas pretty late. But that is a major discussion in the poskim. How late can one start Shalashudas? So again, one should really start before Shkia. The Taz is Mako. The Maggid Avram and other Achronim argue, and they say starting a meal is not a good thing. The Mishnah Berurah is Mako. Mishnah Berurah says, not b'diavad, l'chadchila not. Says the Mishnah Berurah in source 34 regarding shalashudas. You have to start even after shkia. And Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, quoted by Rav Nevin Zal, says maybe that was in the Mishnah Berurah's place in Russia, but in Eretz Yisrael, where the sun sets much quicker and Ben Hashmashas is much quicker, as we spoke about earlier. No. It says you really have to start it beforehand. He quotes in the Rav Nevin Zal Mishnah Berurah in source 35, he quotes from Shlomo Zalman, She'ein li tol yadayim l'tzul l'shlishis lachar shkia. No washing after shkia. V'atam mishum she'be'eretz Yisrael noagim ka'agra. As we said, Tzeis is less than half an hour. We said according to the Gra. We saw that earlier. You can't start. The Mishnah Berurah is going like Tam and Chutz La'aretz. But here, not, and therefore one shouldn't start it. Rav Ovadia is more makel again, that you could start it for a couple minutes after in Chazon Ovadia, mutar lechos v'l'shlishis ad kareva shachar shkia, until about a quarter of an hour. Where does he get that from? So he gets that from the shiurim that we said before in terms of the bein hashmashas, and according to the Gra, it's still suffix. According to Rabbi Natan, it's vadayom. According to the Gra, it's still suffix. Salamaisa. If somebody was unable, so it's all b'di'evet. If somebody was unable to start shalosh before shkia, so in chutz la'aretz, okay, you can start for a couple minutes after. In Eretz Yisrael, it's really harder, but it's still a machlokas. What about other types of items? If somebody was eating a meal, so then they could continue eating the meal. If they were drinking wine or beer before sunset, so the Gemara sounds like they should stop except for water. But we saw there are those that are makel, but sure water should be okay. The Aruch HaShulchan says maybe mizonos is also okay if you're eating it, right? Fruit and drinks, not. But v'nirali afilu ochla mizonos in kfiyas. The Aruch HaShulchan thinks that is not a kfiyas, while others, the Rabbi Tzion Abishal, thinks that might be okay, mizonos, to continue eating as well. Rav Soloveitchik has developed in one of his yahrzeit shiurim that the idea of not eating before Havdala is not just a regular din of not eating before mitzvahs. Not eating before mitzvahs, because then, first of all, should be able to snack. You're able to snack before doing mitzvahs. So why is this different? So the Rav mentioned, well, we know there's Havdala in davening, and there's a Havdala ala kos. We'll talk about that, B'ez Hashem, in the future. Why do you need two Havdalas for? So said the Rav, so it's l'chadchila. If you forget Hatachon Antanu, you don't have to repeat it. But the Rav thought that Hatachon Antanu was about Havdala on the Kedushas Hayom, and the Havdala ala kos is the mavdil between Seudah Shabbos and Seudas Chol. And that's why it's crucial not to eat before Havdalah, because the whole point is establishing that Shabbos meals are over, and now it's a Seudas Chol, and Seudas Chol, that's why Havdalah has to be at the beginning of it, to establish it. This is in the second volume of Shiur L'Zecher Abamari, in the article entitled Kiddush and Havdala. Havdala bitzlusa, the Havdala in davening, hi chalos hafkos kedushas hayom. It's a removal of the kedushas hayom. Kishi nimshachas de tosefes. The kishemavdil pakala kedushas hayom shel tosefes. It removes it. Of yeshal Havdala bitfila habagdil hazikas kedushas yom v'chalos tosefes makbila lekiddush. It's parallel to kiddush. Be'erev Shabbos hamachadesh kedushas hayom. Baram Havdala ala kos einan is kekas klal kedushas hayom. Hanimshechas de harachas atosefes. The Havdalah ala kos is not directly connected. You said Baruch HaMavdil if you drove home from shul. Kedusha zukvar paka b'Havdalah batachoni, and the kedusha is already gone. Kol kula shel Havdalah ala kos. And again, if it's D'Rabbanan, then this was the nature of the takana. Ba biglal gemar seudas Shabbos. Hamachayiv hu gemar haseuda. Oh, ksheno asuk b'seuda zman yesias haShabbos hamesayim efshorus shel seuda Shabbos. We didn't keep it for oneg. It's the hashlama, right? I said it's the tchilas. It's the mafsik. It's the mavdil between Seuda Shabbos and Seudas Chol. And again, it's highlighting that Seudas Shabbos is something unique and special, and therefore that's why that's part of the issue of not eating before Havdalah. Beautiful. And that's about eating. What about malacha? So the Gemara talks about Shabbos Kufnun, turning to page 179, that although one cannot perform malacha until after Havdalah, one can say Baruch HaMavdil Bekodesh L'cho. Kufnun, all the way at the end of Masechah Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Asr lo adam she'aseh chavazav kodem she'avdil. Right, you're not allowed to do anything before one makes Havdalah. Amr Rabbi Abba Rav Ashi, b'ma'arav amrin and hachi hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol v'yavdin and sarchen. We used to say that when we did two things before Havdalah. So we used to say hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol and then did our stuff. Amr Rav Ashi ki avina be'erav kahana havi amr hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol u'mizaltin and silsi. We said it, and then we started cutting up wood because we were freezing. We wanted to make a fire, so we used to cut up wood already after hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. Rashi quotes that later on they made a Havdalah ala kos, right? And that's what the Shulchan Aruch says in source 41 and Reis Hadites. Asr laso shem malacha kodem sheyavdil. Even if Shabbos is quote unquote over, you have to make Havdalah before malacha. So you say the words v'im hivdil b'tfila mutter avi shadayin lo hivdil ala kos. Right? Malacha becomes mutter once you said atachon antanu or hamavdil. V'im sarach lasos malacha kodem sheyivdil b'tfila omer hamavdil ben hakodesh ben hachol below bracha without shem Hashem. Va'osa melacha. What about women? Women have to remember this. Women are at home sometimes. They're not davening ma'ariv, and they're going to start doing melacha. They should say hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. They have to say that in order to do melacha. The Mishnah Berurah quotes also, we shouldn't be involved in any activities, any weekday activities before Havdalah, right? Even if it's not a melacha. The Mishnah Berurah says this in source 42 in Sifkat and Lamed Beis. Shum melacha afilu chafatzim asurim midevrei sofrim. The chafatzim, other items that we're not supposed to be involved in on Shabbos. Still, we shouldn't be involved in it. In that case, there is a halacha. Maybe we'll talk about next time in terms of if one forgets to say atachon antanu, so then one eats. Then one has to repeat. Usually you don't have to repeat Shemona Esrei for Ma'ariv if you forget to talk about Tanu, but if you ate, so then you do. So we'll have to talk about that knas that the Gemara says, Ta, Bazu, Bazu. The Tzitz Eliezer in Yud Aleph Lamed Daled, in the last source here, discusses, what about Shavua Tov? Is that enough? Hamad ben Kodesh L'chol? So he says, no. He says, Havdala is mentioning Ma'avdil ben Kodesh L'chol, Shabbos V'chol. Shavua Tov, have a good week. So yeah, that symbolizes, but it's really not good. So again, they talk about if you get in the taxi after Shabbos and he didn't make Havdalah, you can say Shavua Tov, so that helps out a little bit. So that helps him out, but really, that one is not really Yotzei with that. One would have to say Amavdil. That's where it sits. Eliezer Uladaiti. Efshar Latzeis Bamira Shavuatov Yidei Chovas Havdala. Bios V'Milam Elam Lo Muskeres Havdala Mekodesh L'Chol. Right, there's nothing mentioned there about the difference. Well, Yom Sefer Mitzvahs La Rambam, as we saw before, it's about saying Shabbos is different, cordoning off Shabbos, and you don't get that by Shavuot Tov. Good. What's the last time you can make Havdalah? The last time you make Havdalah, so obviously the last. What's the best time to make Havdalah? Motzei Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos. So when is the last time? So it's a couple of days in the Gemara. Psachim Kuvav. Arvi Psachim has many of the halachas of Kiddush and Havdalah are there in Arvi Psachim. Source 45 on page 182. Amri b'nei Rabbi Chia, Mishalo Hivdil b'Motzei Shabbos, Ma'adav Olei Kol b'Chol Shabbos Kulo. The whole week. Nobody says the whole week. V'yad Kama, what does that really mean? What did b'nei Rabbi Chia mean by the whole week? Amar Rabbi Zera ad Revi b'Shabbos, until Wednesday, which means Tuesday night. The Rambam seems to say he had a different gears in the Gemara, including Wednesday, but that's not what we hold. Ad Revi b'Shabbos, we assume until Wednesday. Kiyad Yosef Reb Zera Kamei to Ravasi, and Ravasi was in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Yosef Kamar Linyan Gittin, also regarding another halacha, regarding gets. You're right. Chada b'Shabbos Tzlasa Basar Shabsa. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday has to do with the earlier the previous Shabbos, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday has to do with the next Shabbos. Right. That's so you see in other halachas as well. The first 3 days of the week are connected to the previous Shabbos. Also, there's the aura of Shabbos, right? It still is being mashpia, but that is that's what we have in the Gemara. The Gemara later on also Rava echoes the words of Rabbi Chia in source 47 Psachim Kuv Zayin Mishlo Hivdil b'Motzei Shabbos Ma'avdil v'Holech Kol Shabbos Kulo. So again, what do we paskin? So there is a Rif. The Rif quotes a day that says one day, just Sunday. So maybe even just Motzei Shabbos. Maybe even just Motzei Shabbos. So those are deos, but we don't paskin that way. The Rif seems to say Sunday. The Bahag even says just Motzei Shabbos. Again, where does this come up? If somebody's an Onain on Motzei Shabbos, could they make Havdalah on Sunday night, on Monday? Sometimes it happens. Tisha B'Av, we make Havdalah on Sunday night if Tisha B'Av is on Shabbos or Sunday. So the Shulchan Aruch quotes these opinions. Shulchan Aruch, Reit Tzadi Test, source 50. Shachach v'lo hivdil b'Motzei Shabbos. If somebody forgot, or for some other reason, did not make Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos, Mavdil at Sof Yom Shlishi until the end of Tuesday. And if not. If you didn't make Havdalah, you didn't make Havdalah in that case. Yontif, by the way, is different. What's halacha by Yontif? You don't make Havdalah. You have one day there because Yontif doesn't have to do with Shabbos. So how long do you have for Yontif? Okay, discussion in the Achronim. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Mavdil Yom Shlishi v'yesh omer she'ino Mavdil ela kol Yom Rishon v'lo Yoser. Some see only one day, the Rif. V'dafka bari pri hagafen v'amavdil mein kodesh l'chol. And for sure, just to add, when you do the delayed Havdalah, it's only bari pri hagafen and amavdil. Aval al ner v'besamim ein mevarach al Motzei Shabbos. That we hold. Ner and besamim is only Motzei Shabbos. V'yesh misha omer dota kaimel an toa mavdil hani milecha dehipto v'lo Motzei Shabbos. Some say the halacha of if you ate, you still make Havdalah, which is what we hold. That's only Motzei Shabbos. Some say that if you ate and you're not making Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos, then you lost it. You don't make Havdalah, but we don't pass in that way. Iker kisvara harishana. But again, one should try to make Havdalah on time. The Ben Ish Chai says if you're making a later Havdalah, maybe you shouldn't say Shem and Malchus, because some Rishonim say you can't make it after Motzei Shabbos or Sunday, but we paskin that you can say it. You can say the regular Havdalah, Bari Pergafen and Amavdil, all the way through Tuesday. The Shemir Shabbos says that Lo Hidil b'Motzei Shabbos, Bein b'Shogig, Bein b'Mezid, Yavdil miyad kishin izkar. Make Havdalah when you remember, Bein b'Layla, Bein b'Yom, Acharish Pal Tefillah Shachar. So Mavdil at Sof Yom Shlishi, right, all the way until Tuesday. Right, one of my son-in-law told me that he went on Simchas Torah, Rahman al-Islan, when he went down to the Otef to near Aza, and he was so busy he didn't make Havdalah that week. It's the only time in his life he said, when do you not make Havdalah? He was busy that day, and he said they didn't have anything. So he said it was ready Wednesday, Thursday, and he remembered, we didn't make Havdalah. But again, that's an extreme situation. But if one would have to be able to make Havdalah through Tuesday, so then one will make it through Tuesday. And the Beis Yosef talks about Besamim only Motzei Shabbos, Ner only Motzei Shabbos, because Ner was created only on Motzei Shabbos, and Besamim, one only feels the Neshama Yasera leaving Motzei Shabbos. We'll get to that, B'ez Hashem, in a future shiur. Motza'ei Shabbos is also a time to sing about Eliyahu Hanavi. We'll have to talk about Malav Malka. Why? Why do we sing about Eliyahu Hanavi? So a couple of days. Some say the Gemara says in Erevin that Eliyahu Hanavi can't come on an Erev Shabbos or a Shabbos. It's too hard for people. They're getting ready for Shabbos. Mashiach's going to come. Eliyahu Hanavi is going to make everything great. So right after Shabbos, we say, okay, now we can come again. Right? Or some say it's related to the Gemara in Shabbos that if Bnei Yisrael would keep 2 Shabbosos miyad nigalim, they would be redeemed. So the Sefer Amanik quotes that we hope that, or the Abu Dram quotes that, we hope that we fulfill that, and therefore we're ready and zocha for Mashiach to come. So this is the first shiur relating to Havdala. By the Shem, next time we'll pick up with the second and final shiur relating to Havdala and the Assays of Shabbos. And after that, by the Shem, we start the Malachas. Okay, we'll stop here.